Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, dust lasers, peasants, vassals, Coptics. I'm a useful idiot. Today I want to talk about Egypt. And this will be an elaboration, an extension on the last video I did about one Egyptian puppet replacing another Egyptian puppet. And there's a couple different topics I want to address here within this idea of what's going on in Egypt. And that's, first of all, there's been some dilemma about whether it was a coup. And now, of course, it turns out it very much was a coup and was pre-planned. It was not a spontaneous support by the military of the rising masses. And so I stand by my observation that it's the old puppets taking over for the new puppets. And I will show in this video, too, why the Muslim Brotherhood, to me, are also puppets of the United States. As I've already stated before, the throngs, the masses, the Islamist in the street that supports the Muslim Brotherhood and is in it doesn't necessarily have to be on board with the real agenda. They are just useful idiots used by the people who run the organization, and they are the ones who are the puppets to the U.S., Israeli, Saudi Arabia agenda. And in spite of what people think about Morsi, for the most part, he was not supporting the platform on which he was voted and that the Muslim Brotherhood wanted. He never opened the Gaza blockade, he didn't cut ties with Israel, and he didn't restore ties to Iran. So Morsi found himself somewhat isolated within the government because there's so many people from the old regime still in the government. And in fact, Egypt was never cleansed of the corrupt figures of the from the Mubarak regime by the Muslim Brotherhood, and instead joined them. And this was a miscalculation, because then they ended up having to turn to the United States and signing a deal with the devil in order to ascend to power. And as we've seen before, the United States can be a fickle friend in those situations. So the other thing that we now know and have more documentation is the fact that the CIA have been a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood since the 1940s and 1950s. There's no reason why they wouldn't have a relationship with them now. So we have a scenario where we have the United States government, the U.S. military, supporting the Egyptian military, and then the CIA supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, and probably a lot of mixed crossed wires in that mix too. Then we have to ask ourselves, is destabilization what the American agenda is for Egypt? I don't think so, but I am interested to see the fact that Saudi Arabia, along with Qatar and Kuwait, have chipped in $10 billion in order to prop up the Egyptian regime. So that bears out my thought that Saudi Arabia would step in. I thought there was a potential that Saudi Arabia would provide troops, but instead they just provided a great deal of money, which will help this new transition, because the Saudis have a lot of interest in having the military regime go back into power. And the U.S. and Muslim Brotherhood use each other for useful idiots. So it's not a one-way street. The Muslim Brotherhood used the Obama administration to rise to power, and the Obama administration uses the Muslim Brotherhood in regional hotspots, including Syria. And the Muslim Brotherhood was very useful, motivated by Western interests for the original Arab Spring, but they are no longer useful. And so interesting to see this huge crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood, including massive arrests and being rounded up, and as well as the massacres that we've seen now. And so we have the military in power, the Constitution's been suspended, the Parliament's been dissolved, we are back to square one. And we have some interesting characters popping up in this Egyptian scenario. We have Adi al-Mansur is now the president of Egypt, and a Mubarak appointed judge. And President Morsi was legally forced to appoint him as the head of the Egyptian Supreme Constitutional Court. So he's already put into place to continue the Mubarak regime's hold on the government when he was put as head of the Egyptian Supreme Constitutional Court, but he's basically a civilian figurehead for the military government. And then we also have Muhammad al-Baradei, who is now the interim prime minister, and no surprise, he has connections to the Carnegie and Ford Foundations and the George Soros Open Society. So we're seeing a lot of paper trail and money being funneled into Egypt for all these opposition groups all along their history. And I'll include a link below that has the money trail for money going in from all these foundations, going into destabilize Egypt and support different opposition groups. And another thing, interesting dynamic about the situation in Egypt is the privately owned media in Egypt was always anti-Muslim Brotherhood. No surprise there. The Mubarak years were very good to them. They're very secular. They are a business, and they certainly weren't interested in the direction that the Islamists were going to take the country. So having them, the media, on the side of the anti-Muslim Brotherhood movement has certainly helped this whole revolution along, and I'm sure it helped get 33 million people in the street. And like I said before, the Muslim Brotherhood was never fully in power. It shared power with the old regime, which served the interests of Israel and the United States. And in fact, a great example of this is a key figure, Grand Mufti Ahmed al-Tayyab. And he was appointed by Mubarak. He was originally appointed by Mubarak and criticized the Muslim Brotherhood when Mubarak was in power. And then he denounced Mubarak and joined the Muslim Brotherhood when it gained power. And then he turned around again and denounced the Muslim Brotherhood again when the military removed it from power. So that's how it works. That's how it works with bureaucrats. They'll go any way the wind blows, generally speaking. And that's what they did in this situation. Bureaucrats just covering their ass, just like they do in every state. And so now we have all the same people in the government that served under the Mubarak in the military, and then Ben Morsi in the Muslim Brotherhood, and now the military again. So ironic that the secular and the Islamists could get together to topple the original military and Mubarak government to replace it with Morsi and the Islamists, only to welcome back the very same military that they were toppling during the Arab Spring. So a bit of irony there. But we also have some other interesting people popping up when we look at both the Mubarak transition to the Arab Spring and then the Morsi government, because it turns out Mubarak's Attorney General, Abdel Mahmoud, was removed from the November 2012 election. He has now been reinstated. So now we have another Mubarak crony as the Attorney General there. And another interesting figure is Mubarak's head of Mubarak's head of military intelligence, who had worked closely with the U.S. and Israel, became Morsi's defense minister and head of the Egyptian army. So even Morsi was put into a position where he kowtowed to American interests by having their man, someone who worked with Mubarak in military intelligence with the U.S. and Israel, became Morsi's defense minister and head of the Egyptian army. He was pretty much set up from the start not to have control of the military and not have full control of the government. And interestingly, when Mubarak regime transitioned over to the Morsi regime, Morsi's foreign minister was the former U.S. ambassador in the U.S. and Saudi Arabia under Mubarak. So there's another connection to why the Muslim Brotherhood Morsi is an American puppet and why the Egyptian military is an American puppet. And in the transition from Mubarak to Morsi, we also had the Interior Ministry, the Defense Ministry, and the Suez Canal Authority remained in the hands of Mubarak cronies. So most importantly, to keep control of the country, even with the Muslim Brotherhood in power, the Interior Ministry and Defense Ministry, the two control mechanisms, were always in the hands of Mubarak cronies. And of course, the Suez Canal Authority remained in the hands of Mubarak cronies to protect Western interests. So, and then the biggest thing here is that, or two of the biggest things about this story to me are the fact that, one, a military coup had already been considered after the 2012 election when Morsi got elected. So the military was already considering a coup on their own when the election itself happened. And then the other part of that is that for the last couple of weeks and for months before that, the U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, as well as the Chief of Staff General Martin Dempsey, were in permanent communication with the architects and military behind this coup in Egypt, especially in the 2 weeks preceding the military takeover. So this is a very Western-backed, Western-motivated coup. The fact is that it's come out that the Egyptian military said that if they could get enough people in the street, then they would remove the Morsi Islamic government. This is something that was agreed on way before it ever happened. So it's hardly all spontaneous, but it's certainly a sequence of events that everybody used to forward their agenda. So let's remember that this military government is the same government that during the Arab Spring and before Morsi was elected, in the 15 months that the military ruled Egypt, the same ones that are back in power now, 850 people were killed, 1,000 subjected to forced disappearances, and over 12,000 civilians were put through military trials. So let's not lose sight of who this government is. For now, of course, the United States has skirted the whole fact that it's illegal to support a government toppled by a military coup, but since the United States is behind it and helped orchestrate it, then I guess that's okay then, right? And the deal to give the Egyptian military F-16 fighters continues, and as well as the fact that there will be new negotiations for the IMF loan, although they can probably put that on the back burner now after getting $10 billion from the Saudis, United Arab Emirates, in Kuwait. And this blaming the economic collapse on Morsi is also a little disingenuous. I just want a little footnote about that because they've been leading up to these economic problems since 1991. So they are no longer self-sufficient with agriculture. They have very high unemployment. Food prices have risen dramatically, and their industry is contracting. So they have some similarities with a lot of other countries in the world. So this frustration with Morsi's economic problems is just a front for other reasons why he had to be taken down. So anyway, just wanted to add that to the mix. So let's see if there's anything else I forgot here. I think we've seen that this is old puppets coming back into power to replace the new puppets, and we'll see what goes from here. The military will probably remain in power. The Mubarak infrastructure will probably remain in power. So the new elections will just be about picking yet another puppet. So in the meantime, we have the old puppets taking down the new puppets. Now we have some interim puppets until they elect the new puppets. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too. And remember, if I agreed with you, then we'd both be wrong.